Okay, Pam, we are live.
All right, I'm still muted. Roll call, Jade, sorry.
Pam Weil,
Here, and in East Lansing and Ingham County.
Chuck Overby,
Here, I'm in East Lansing and Ingham County.
Alex Smith,
Here in Ingham County, in East Lansing.
Adam DeLay,
Adam, you're muted.
Yeah. One thing I will be so glad not to have to say anymore when this is over. Here, attending virtually East Lansing, Ingham County.
Sarah Hoover,
Here, East Lansing, Clinton County.
Sarah Ruckhout,
Here, East Lansing, Ingham County.
Nicole Biber.
Okay. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Any discussion, amendments, changes? Hearing none, all those in favor of moving the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the agenda passes. Approval of the minutes for our previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any modifications, observations, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Hearing none. Minutes are approved. Do we have any public comment, Justin?
We do not have any callers.
Okay. And now we'll move on to the business item, Park and Rec Director position vacancy update. Mr. Lahanas.
Well, good evening, all. I'm George Lahanas. It is a pleasure to see you all. Thank you for having me. I'm just going to talk for a little bit about some things and really here to gain your input and hear what you have to think about the position. But before I started, I wanted to quickly thank Tim McCaffrey for his service to the City of East Lansing and obviously to the Parks and Recreation Department. I've had the pleasure of working with Tim for just about over 20 years now. Can't believe it's been that long, but when he got here, there really was no Parks and Rec Department, which was kind of strange for a city in 1999 or 2000 to have no department. But we sort of had this hybrid system of things broken up. We had passed some bonds from the voters to build some facilities. Tim came in and in that time has built a great, highly regarded, well-functioning department with all the program offerings, the sports, the athletics, the facilities, all the great things that we have to offer. So I have a high degree of appreciation for Tim and for his calm demeanor. If you've worked for him for any period of time, never seems rattled, always seems steady, knowledgeable, professional, and he's got a great commitment to public service and to Parks and Recreation. So big thank you to Tim McCaffrey for his service to the city. And I think it's been about 40 years in total of public service, which is great. Next, I wanted to say a thank you to Wendy, who's on the call. Wendy will be serving as our interim when Tim steps away to retire. And I wanted to mention that I did talk to Wendy about her interest in the position to see if she was interested. And she told me that she considered that, but that she is not interested in applying for the position on a regular basis, but that she was willing to serve. So for the interim, we will be seeing Wendy in the role, which I greatly appreciate her willing to step up and serve. Even though she's not willing to serve in the future in that capacity, she is going to obviously stay with us in her important capacity as assistant director. So thanks, Wendy, for your service. We appreciate that as well. So a couple of things that I'd like to do is first get your feedback on what you'd like to see from a director. And then the second thing is to describe the process and how you guys might have a part to play in that. And to talk about the director position, I have already had an opportunity to meet with the staff, all the direct reports that Tim has last week, and heard their feedback and thoughts on what they think about the position, the posting, and what they wanted to see from their next director. So that was really useful. I got to spend quite a bit of time with them and sort of looking for the same thing from you. So there really isn't a structure to it. I think that Jane is going to be, is Jane on? I think Jane is going to be writing notes for me, and I just get to
I am.
listen and hear sort of what you think is important in terms of our next director position. How this will be useful to me is obviously I'm going to be having a panel at some point here, interviewing people. And then when I come up with the questions, when I get to hear the answers and responses and judge the candidates, I'm going to be able to think about all the things that the staff and the commission, and of course for myself, what we think we want to see in the next Parks and Rec director. So with that, please feel free to just jump in. I think we don't have that many people here. I think there's 7 people, commission members here. So I think if people want to put their hands up or just start talking, however you want to proceed, Chair. But I'm just here to hear your input and maybe ask some questions on what you think is important.
All right. Someone have some comments for George? I can start.
Great.
I've spent 20 years on the Ingham County Parks Commission, and we went through a very similar legend of a parks director in replacing Bob Moore, who retired, who had built the county park system basically from scratch, not unlike Tim. And in that case, it was our role was to hire as the commission to hire the parks director. So that was, I'm glad we don't have that responsibility, honestly, at this juncture. That was challenging and interesting and sad to hear about Wendy's choice. I totally get it. I bet she'd do it if we could get her a Wendy. Okay, so now my personal view, and one of the reasons that I'm on this commission is I think parks and recreation are critical community building blocks, and they represent the nature of a community in so many positive ways. And the parks director it's an executive leadership position that means dealing with you, George, the city council, this commission, and citizens. And so just like Wendy's skills with grants and boards, that's why I think she would have been so great. But that it's a real different position than managing a park day to day, the physical labor of the park, that sort of thing. But you got to know that. Well, thank you. And one of the things that I would like to see is that the person taking this role have a community priority sense, not just be a sports person, not have, everybody has their favorites, but that really look at the public land as public land use and optimizing neighborhood activities and that sort of thing.
So again, trying to summarize it back to you a bit, someone working with all the different aspects, city manager, council, commission, public staff, someone who can really be the leadership position, executive, maybe not someone who's going to be mired in the day-to-day, but knows how to work with all these different stakeholders. And then the community priority, that sense that Parks and Rec fills a very important role in terms of the open space, the parks, land, all of that. And
activities, because it's the B&A care at this juncture. Sure. It's the Hannah Community Center, and so it has such an
You went to muted, Pam.
I think it's her connection, actually.
Mhm.
Oh,
Hopefully she'll jump back on in a second.
she's
Oh,
back.
there you are. You're
We
back.
kind of lost you for a minute, Pam.
Yep, you froze, but now you're back.
I hung up that way. How am I now? I can see my mic levels.
You're back.
Okay, but yeah, so, but it is frequently that is the interaction that people have with the city, and the super positive one. So that being a positive and keeping it a positive, you know, being aware of its importance and like I said, its role in the community. So.
Yep. And I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that when you think about public goods and services, parks and recreation really is, I mean, fits so squarely in that, because the community can't provide vast amounts of open land for individuals, for yourself. You can have a yard, maybe if you're fortunate, but maybe not that big. But the community gets to provide this great public service and these public goods of this, you know, vast parkland that we all get to benefit from. So it really is a treasure for a community.
I'm glad to jump in next.
Great.
So I would start with a strong value for parks and recreation activities and properties. That continues what I see as the legacy of Tim and the city. They want to pursue parks and recreation activities and properties that meet the needs of East Lansing residents. So we understand what those needs are, and that we work in Parks and Rec to try to address those needs as they change and anticipate those changing needs. Continue to pursue Parks and Recreation funding, which is how East Lansing has expanded.
Go back about that first point. Are you saying, for instance, that like we're expanding pickleball? Because right now people have had this huge increasing appetite for pickleball, but maybe we're getting a little less tennis. So sort of being in touch with what your community wants to see in terms of amenities.
Right. I see a move from softball to pickleball, for example.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
And that the director sees and anticipates those changes and can encourage and support them as the citizens want to move to some different activities.
Great.
So the other point I was making was the Parks and Recreation funding. Tim and Wendy both have been very active in pursuing funding from the Dnr Trust Fund. And that's really been how East Lansing has expanded and improved their and recreation services. And this is an avenue that I believe is critical, and the new director would need to continue to pursue those funding activities. East Lansing doesn't have the kind of money that we've gotten from the trust fund to help us out with parks and recreation activities. And overall, I'd be looking for good management skills, someone that treats those that they work with courtesy and civility and dignity. And that's a phrase I get from my mother. And I would also look for an inclusive approach to the work of Parks and Recreation, that it's inclusive of people in East Lansing, of people in the surrounding community that use our services. Hannah is a good example of people that come to the Hannah Center from the surrounding communities. And there's also people that use our trails from surrounding communities. I would bet it's a significant portion. So those are the things that come to mind that I would look for in a new director.
Yeah, I think the grants thing is particularly important because, you know, we have some income tax money, but it's never quite enough, right? But being able to leverage that with DNR dollars and private fundraising and all the different things that Tim and Wendy have been able to do has really stretched our dollars much further than we really had any hope to happen. So that's great. And obviously good management skills. We want someone, just like you mentioned, that treats people with dignity and respect and knows how to work well and positively and collaboratively and empower employees. So we have a really great management team, Wendy on down, and we want to make sure that that's someone who can make good use of those employees and get their best. So great. And then of course, inclusivity, the past year has been obviously a big push for us from council and from staff in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being able to have somebody who understands the important role that Parks and Rec provides in providing recreational opportunities to everybody, I think is great as well. So excellent. Thank you.
And George, I would just add that Parks and Recreation is about fun.
Yeah.
And someone that understands that the heart of this is you go swimming and you enjoy it. You use the bike trails and you enjoy it. You're playing pickleball and you're having fun. So our goal is to create a community setting and structure that allows us, all of us that live in the community, to have fun.
Excellent.
Alex, did you have something?
Yeah, I'll jump in next. I would totally emphasize everything both Pam and Chuck have already said, but especially the DEI and the inclusion pieces. That was, I'm glad that's already come up. But I think one other consideration would be not a requirement, but perhaps some preference towards someone who kind of understands the dynamics of a college town, a university town, and some of the opportunities there with kind of branching into that group. I know that there are a few places that are as I think university centric is East Lansing, and who knows where folks would apply from. But if there were a candidate that had that kind of experience and understood the dynamics of a community like this, I feel like that would potentially make for an even better fit. Just like I said, ways that we could involve our students in the parks and recreation more. And I know that could be in a variety of different ways, but that to me stands out as something that could make for an especially good fit.
They certainly also provide a tremendous resource in terms of the employee capabilities that we get to make use of, which is great for them to learn and for us to have the benefit of their skills. So excellent.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the community building role that can be, is to integrate assorted people with assorted interests. That's one of the funnest things about picking up a game at the Hannah Center, even being in there playing cards with people, or it's somebody, you meet new people. It's that community building feature of particularly recreation and parks. Adam?
Oh, yeah, I guess I'll go. Although a lot of good points have already been made, so I'll try not to retread too much. But I think definitely, there's sort of like two arenas that I think of, like, how well do you know sort of like the inner workings of Parks and Rec, regardless of what kind of community you're dealing with. But then also, how well do you know a community like this, which is, I think Alex made that point, and that's a great point, is we're a unique town comparable to a lot of other cities. I imagine you'll probably get, and I'm guessing, applicants who are either, directors of maybe a little bit smaller communities who are looking to come into a bigger community, or assistant directors of large communities who are now looking to take over as a director for a community their size. And I think that, my experience correlates with having previously been in Lansing Township, serving as a township trustee, and I can tell you our Parks and Rec department was one person, the director, and he did everything from present the budget to cut the grass and paint the grills. So I don't think we're expecting that level, but like Pam said, somebody who knows some of that nitty gritty, who maybe either has some previous experience or just knows what is expected of the staff and the logistics that go into it. And I think that, again, what kind of community are you coming from is important. I going back to my township experience, we had to go through the process of hiring a police chief and a fire chief. And one of the things we looked at was, where are you coming from? And if it was comparable to the population, the makeup, the size of the park system. I think we have a fairly robust park system for a city our size. And so, not every city is as lucky as us. And so I think it comes down to sort of, and I think the last thing I'll say, and this has been echoed, I think it's absolutely necessary. The question is have you ever applied for or have experience applying for a DNR Trust Fund grant? Because just looking at the history of our department, that funding is so critical to what we want to do moving forward. So I think that just having some experience and knowing that process, maybe coming from a community that is comparable either in terms of the population, and then, also, and sort of the makeup of a university town, and then also just sort of knowing the gears of how a Parks and Rec program works.
Right, I hear that. We do have Wendy who can teach us. The person as well.
True.
And I guess on that note too, I would say I would like someone with an expansive vision of grants that might be community building grants, might be art grants, that go above and beyond the land. And not that I'm not loving the capital improvements, I'm not saying that, but to have that expansive kind of community building. I'm thinking of the way that the county parks, we ran no act. We did have a camp, but we didn't really talk about it. But we ran no act. There was no rec, and it was all land management. And they did a beautiful job, but there was no recreation. And that is, Tim will tell you, that's a kettle of fish. So the recreation facilities and programs that we run are a whole other ball of wax. And so, so the county people, no experience with that. I mean, they may have it somewhere else, but so that's something. And I think that's you're totally on the nose. Where are they coming from? What did that system look like? What experience have they had with? I mean, we're not urban, but we have more of that than the large, parks.
Yeah. Because we're a decent sized system, but to your point, you could have somebody that's coming from a county sized system. But what I think is impressive about, we have everything from softball, soccer, all the way to theater, which I think is something that you don't see in your average Parks and Rec program. So yeah, I think your point's well taken. Is it's not so much just the size, but also the diversity of the programming that we provide. I frankly would rather take somebody who's maybe from a little bit of a smaller town, but the programming's more spread out than, like you're saying, something more at the county level where, yes, you have a large infrastructure, but your programming is not. So I think that's right. Where you're coming from and what we're looking for, I think that the backgrounds will play a lot in terms of how do you fit in. But you're right. I mean, with any new community, part of it, there's going to be a learning curve. Folks have to teach you things. We don't necessarily have to have somebody who's ready to go immediately if we see there's potential in there. But as long as you have the building blocks of those pieces, I think that you can definitely have the workings of a great director.
They definitely are potentially different skill sets, right? I mean, one is managing facilities and buildings, and we've got a lot of capital needs, and there's got to be a lot of capital investment in our government buildings and our parks facilities. But then you also have someone you want to have that has a good, exciting sense of what recreation activity should be in a community. So someone who has that forward thinking and a really progressive view. So I think it's a pretty big range of skills that you need.
Yeah, and hopefully the challenge sometimes is you'll end up dealt with the budgetary side. So hopefully we get that unicorn, right, that knows all the different pieces. So we'll just have to see.
And of course, I'm mindful as we go further on, everyone has said all the stuff, so it gets harder and harder. So whoever's left, I still want to hear from you though. But I know that a lot of the stuff has been said, but it's really useful to hear it.
And hey, this is what I do want to say to everybody. And I'm maybe looking a little bit at Wendy, a little bit at Tim and Jane, whoever, but reach out to people that you think might be good candidates. If you are familiar with anyone that you think would make a good parks director, please reach out to them and ask them to apply. That's a real critical piece in diversity hiring. It's a critical piece in getting the best candidates. People know somebody. Anyway, so I'm just saying, think about calling somebody.
So let me quickly go into, if anyone has anything else to share, like I said, please share via email. If you have any thoughts for me, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. Hopefully the posting will be going up potentially yet this week or early next week, hopefully going out. So in terms of the process, this is the process that I envision, having a posting up for a considerable period, probably 3 weeks, because we want to make sure and cast a pretty wide net. And then in terms of interviews, let me just actually step a quick second back and say what my role here is. So if everyone doesn't know, as a city manager, I work for the city council. Obviously your council liaison, Ron Bacon, council member. 5 council members hire one person to run the day-to-day operations of city government. That's me. And then all the other employees work through me inevitably and report to me either directly or indirectly. So I hire the director positions and obviously supervise and come up with all the sort of general directions of government and implement council's policies. But the department heads have to have a high degree of sort of autonomy
We lost you, George.
Still, am I here?
There we
There.
go.
You're
Okay.
back.
So obviously it's something, I'll start a little bit back. And it's something we rely on, not just, direction for me, but we have a lot of,
I still can't hear him.
uh-oh,
I can.
uh-oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 It's like the AT&T commercial. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, we rely on the directors of our departments to provide lots of the expertise and lots of the ideas and lots of the progressive thinking, because we have experts in all these different areas. So obviously in Parks and Rec, we need someone with that expertise, and it's kind of a two-way street in terms of working with someone from my position like that. So in terms of the process, we would have an application process. I would screen applicants and then set up a panel where I would have the main panel of interviews. So I would probably have someone from senior staff at Parks and Rec, probably Wendy, because she's not in the process, she could participate. I would have someone from finance, someone from public works, and maybe another department director. That would be the main interview panel. We would meet with 4, 5, 6 candidates, whatever number we have, if we have a good group of qualified people, and then potentially have that same day, right after they meet with me, do sort of a round robin where they can meet with other stakeholders. And that would be, for instance, meeting with senior staff, have a room where there's senior staff members, and then the applicants can go sit and talk with them. Doesn't have to be a scripted interview. This can just be a meet and greet and chat. And then I can get feedback, written feedback from them in terms of their perceptions. Then we can do the same thing for this commission, but only a portion of this commission, because obviously we can't have a quorum. And then also, if council has an interest, I certainly would want to hear from council as well if they want to participate. And so, for instance, if you guys have, is it 9 members total or 7 members in Parks and Rec?
It's a 7-member commission.
7. So you could have 3 members, for instance, if you wanted to have 3 people who can participate during a day, because you'd be giving up a day. You could sit in a room at City Hall and have candidates come through and meet with them and provide feedback. If no one wants to do it, it's not like it's a requirement. But if people are interested, we would love to have the participation and feedback and get a sort of broader perspective. And then after the interviews, I would have my interview with my panel, and then I would also have written feedback from Parks and Rec Commission members and the senior staff members, and be able to look at all that before making a decision. Of course, if I needed more conversation, I could bring someone back for a second interview. But that way, I think I get to get a pretty broad perspective. It gets to have lots of different stakeholders included in the interview process. And I've had that work in a number of different director positions, and it's sort of worked out really well in terms of feedback. So with that, does anyone have any thoughts about that process? Any interest? And of course, if there's more than 3, then I guess you guys would just have to select and draw straws, just because we can't have a quorum, obviously.
I'm interested. And can I ask George about the postings? So where are you looking at Imparks? Are you looking at?
Yep, so there's the statewide association, right, Tim and Wendy, that we were gonna post with. And then I think there's also a national, but I think we're gonna consider posting that as well. And then we'll probably do the regular stuff like the Michigan Municipal League, and of course our website gets a ton of hits and traffic and word of mouth. And then social media, we push positions out with social media, LinkedIn accounts and all that as well. So.
Yeah, sounds like a good process.
So with that, anyone have any questions about the process? And like I said, if people have interest, maybe you guys can come up with that at your next meeting and give me a couple of names, up to 3 names that want to participate. And then maybe even an alternate, because if the day doesn't work out for somebody, then someone else could jump in who wants to participate, and then meet with the candidates and give us some feedback. That sounds useful for folks.
Good.
All right.
Good.
Anything else for me before I jump off? Any last minute thoughts or anything like that before I go?
You're always welcome. Come anytime.
I want to say thanks all for your service. You appreciate
George,
it.
I do have one additional comment, and that's the importance of hiring and recruitment. Tim recruited all of us to be on the Parks and Recreation Commission, and Tim and others will over the course of their work be will be carrying out hiring and recruitment. And that's really what's going to build a staff and give the new director the tools that they need in place to accomplish their work. So I would stress the importance of that skill.
Putting together a good staff. Of course, we got a good staff, but there's always going to be natural turnover, and there's always
Right, exactly.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate your feedback, appreciate your service, and look forward to seeing you in June for actually probably be July by the time we'll get this process going. But thank you all. Take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you,
All
George.
right. Tim, are you talking benchmarks?
Yes, I am. I'll need to share the screen here. Can you see me sharing?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We were in this a little bit earlier, and I think we decided that it worked better if I left it the way it is right now versus putting it directly into slideshow. But you can help me out if I screw up again, right, Justin? So let me give you a little bit of background on performance benchmarking. We've been doing this now for several years. The National Recreation and Park Association started with a program several years back where they do performance indicators for municipal, county, parks and recreation, township agencies across the country. And then each of the communities that choose to participate provide data on an annual basis. And I think we've been putting data in for, Jane could tell you better than I could, but for at least 5 years. And we've been starting to produce this report that you're going to see a portion of this report tonight. You received the full report in your packet, but we're going to just kind of go over a portion of the report this evening. We've been doing that for about 3 years now. And when I say we, the staff person that's been doing the bulk of the work with respect to this performance benchmarking and performance indicator work is Jane Stone. She's been the one that's compiling all of the data and putting all of the work into the project. So of course, that'll be an easy thing to continue to carry on and continue working in that direction, because Jane will continue to do that far after I'm long gone. But Jane, considerable thank you to Jane. And candidly, I think that the information has been very useful for us. How much we use it, you know, it's great to know, and it's great to know where we fit. One of the things that about benchmarking that I do want to say before I start is obviously benchmarking is more an indicator of kind of where you compare to other similar types of agencies or agencies. In this case, across the country. It's clearly not an evaluation tool. And I think to use it as an evaluation tool would be using it out of its context. So I just wanted to make that statement. The first one that I wanted to bring up was, like I said, I think there's like 30 indicators, and I think I'm going to share like 12 or 13 of them tonight. Mainly showing you how this thing plays out here. So our community is a community of about 48,000 people. So we fit into the column that says population of 20 to 49,000. And the median residents per acre of parkland and that classification of community size would be 1,900 residents per acre of parkland, or excuse me, per park. And we had 1,900 residents per park. And so that falls directly in the median for populations our size, or a little bit closer to the high end of the median. You can see lower quartile typically has lower residents per park, and an upper quartile usually has higher residents per park. So that's just one sort of indicator with respect to that. acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. Median for a community our size is 9.8. We come in at 10.2 with respect to that particular indicator, which in this case is a little bit on the high end. But because of our population size, we're in the upper end of the population and almost in the lower end of the upper quartile. So it makes kind of sense for us to be in the upper end of the median quartile with respect to acres of parkland per 1,000 residents. Miles of trail. Median for communities our size population is around 8.5, according to those that participate in this, and we fall in at 4.5 acres of parkland, or excuse me, miles of trail for our jurisdiction. Next one is Parks and Recreation Agency staffing, full-time equivalents. Now that's full-time staffing plus the number of all of your part-time staffing, and it includes what is full-time equivalents. We're coming right off a budget season, so we talked about full-time equivalents the last couple of years. The median for full-time equivalents for Parks and Recreation for communities our size is 31.4. We have our Parks and Recreation department has 38 full-time equivalents. And then when you add the parks maintenance staff through our public works department, which is perhaps a more or it adds those parks maintenance staff, we get up to 42 full-time equivalents in our park system.
Right,
Yes.
and I think, Tim, can I say this too? Because I've got the county parks on my brain now, with our activities. So fewer staff members are required when you don't have recreational activities, right? So that's something I wonder about norming those numbers depending on what services you're offering.
Right. There's two types of services in our community that contribute to that I would bring up right off the bat. The first one is the robust before or after school program that we have. Although a significant portion of Parks and Recreation agencies do have a before and after school program, not all do, because a lot of times that's through the school system. And then a second one for us is of course, is the Family Aquatic Center, which we hire as many as 70 part-time individuals each summer. And a significant portion of those young people are always East Lansing residents too, high school age or college age East Lansing high school residents. And many of them, it's their first employment experience. And we see ourselves as, that's an important thing for us to be contributing to the community, is helping young people enter employment opportunities.
I can testify how great it was for my son, but that and All of Us Express. So these activities, they pay dividends. Yeah.
Across the board, they do. Thank you. The next one, Parks and Recreation, full-time employees per 10,000 residents, just another way of breaking that down. The median is 9.6 for communities our age, and then our size. And then you can see how the numbers play out there. We're typically right where you would want to be with respect to the median and comparing to other agencies across the country. Annual operating expenditures, a little bit to the higher end of the median for annual operating expenditures, which I'll get to the significant contributing factor to that in just a minute. But 3.2 million is the median, and we're operating at 3.8 in fiscal year 20. And then the upper quartile is more like 5 million, but I'll get to another component associated with that in just a minute. Operating expenditures per capita, we're at 78.53 per capita, and the median in our quartile is about $100. And what gets to that whole comparison, well, not this one, we'll get to that. is operating expenditures per acre of park. We're at 7,450. So again, we're right in the median for a lot of these. But here's the one that I wanted to bring up the most is sources of operating expenditures, the next couple of these. Parks and Recreation Departments, the general fund tax support, typically nationwide are at about 60%. We're at about 46% of our operating expense for general fund support. Earned income, most agencies are around 24% of earned income, and we're at earned income generated revenue of about 52%. That's because of our robust fee structure that we have with respect to our fees and charges for offsetting operating costs. So that adds to our cost, but it also adds revenue, and it shows you how we begin to have more of a cost recovery sort of approach in some respects, or than other communities our size and across the country, actually, for that matter, have. Parks and Recreation revenues per capita. Again, this is revenues outside of the general fund. The median is $23.68, and we're coming in at $33.99. So we're substantially above the median and pecking our way into the upper quartile on revenues per capita. Revenues as a percentage of operating, we talked about that. This is a different way of showing it and how high we are with respect to our fees coming from, or our revenues coming from other than general fund sources. And remember, this is just operating, this isn't capital. Capital budget expenditures, median for communities our size is around $3 million on an annual basis. And in fiscal year 20, we were at $1 million. You'll see in fiscal year 21, when this report gets generated, we're moving up because we're at closer to about 1.8 million next year. Like I said, you can go through the report, and that was the last one that I was going to share this evening. You can go through the report and see this for all of our, I think 30 some benchmarking categories, but we've been doing this. And
let me add a comment too on the capital expenditure. And this is not the report for it, and then that is almost all matching funds. So what we've gotten for our $1 million has been what, Whitney, 3 million worth of bill? I mean, we've gotten so many, right? Am I correct that that's mostly matching funds that ended up bringing more value?
Yes, I mean, what you're talking about for us, and we bring that up is, you know me, Pam. I bring that up every month. Our revenue comes from income tax. It comes from Natural Resources Trust Fund. It comes from grants that we get, contributions that we get, and our city income tax now. It has some dedicated funds, but that's the vast majority of our money comes from other sources, certainly other than the general fund, although occasionally the general fund does.
Right, but what I'm saying is we're saying the capital expenditures is $1 million, but for that $1 million, because a lot of it was matching funds, we've actually gotten a much higher value for the community for that $1 million.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been leveraged,
So that's all I had to share on the benchmarking. This starts the first of several updates that we're planning. In June, Kathleen Miller is scheduled to come in and talk about recreation and arts programming. And then we're running through all of that. I believe that both Pam and Chuck can tell you that when we did this about 2 or 3 years ago with the commission, I think all the commissioners found it very useful and productive to go through that monthly process. It'll take the rest of the calendar year to run through this entire, the entire department. But I think that the commissioners in the past have found that a very useful exercise.
right. One of the and I'm not going to say it's a concern for me, but a discussion I've had with a couple of the city council people is the concern about our fees. So when we did the last fee thing, and we look at that, are we charging too much? Then when I ask them where the money is going to come from or what they, but so that is, it's something that this kind of highlights, that maybe we have more fee-based activities in other communities, or, you know, does that exclude people? If I think our fees are quite reasonable, but you know, I'm just saying, you see that, you think, oh, we're getting a lot of revenue, a disproportionate revenue from fees compared to regular park systems, other park systems.
Right. This is a conversation it's really quite interesting. That I think that the community, with respect to where we sit on how much we charge for user fees, and it's sort of a, where are we going to go with that? Are we going to continue to say this is an important way of funding recreation and parks through ensuring that we get user fees, or do we want to look more closely at going towards more general fund support of these types of activities? And the pendulum moves back and forth with respect to that conversation, but I think over the course of the next few years, that's going to be an important conversation for the Department of Parks and Recreation and the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Right, and I do think it goes hand in glove with all of the services that we're offering. So we offer a lot more recreational activities than other communities do. I do ceramics, there's theater, there's sports. So then is that because we're, and then we do, have we done now I know, I thought we did some sort of fee analysis where we compared our fees to local, was that years ago? But we, you know, like we are, and so you do look and say, is this what other communities are charging for this? Is this
one of the things that our staff do on a regular basis is a comparative. It's not necessarily a formal analysis, but they compare fees almost on an annual basis as they look towards making fee recommendations going from one fiscal year to the next.
Right. So I think that's key to say that our fees are not high. You bundle them all in a giant bundle, there may be a lot of them, but if you take by activity, they're not high.
Depending on the activity area, we tend to be in the middle compared to the area, and oftentimes we're in the lower end of the scale.
I think one way to thread that needle when you talk about, the data seems to show that we have more of a revenue generating approach. And so does that mean that perhaps, that we want to take a look at how we're assessing fees as it compares to other communities, keeping in mind that our programming might be more wide ranging, which can contribute to how much you have to get through through fees, but and I can't remember which Sarah it was, with the idea of doing tiered. Yes. So I think that's the way you thread that needle, because if you do it through a tiered fee schedule, you then have the ability, one, to make sure that folks who may be finding the fees to be a barrier to participating get to participate. And, given how much we are doing this based off of generating revenue versus general fund, I think it opens the door for us to say we can do this in a way that doesn't necessarily have to be 100% revenue neutral. I think if we look at an overall fee structure that is tiered, but maybe comes in a little bit lower, but it allows us to open that door. And I also think that if the floor is lower in terms of what folks can afford, you're going to get more activity, and then you're going to recoup some of the expenses because you're going to have more use. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I definitely think that this, to me, lends support to the idea of looking to the future of doing that tiered structure, because it says, okay, we're tier oriented, maybe a little too, or excuse me, fee oriented, maybe a little too fee oriented. And this is a great way to address that while also opening the door to folks who maybe don't participate right now or participate as often because of those fees.
So I will say, yes, but we also have a scenario where I would like to see scholarships. So we have when I was on the SCDC board, there was a scale, but it was so high that it was normally $800 a month. The scale made it $600 a month. Still prohibitive. So we still have those people coming in and their parents were paying their bills. So so it wasn't, so yeah, so and to look at the programs like the ceramics program, I'm trying to get some money together to have a scholarship so we could have sponsored people and hey, give it a try for free. And, you know, and same with All of Us Express. I would love to see some sort of scholarship opportunities. And because we're talking about pities here, 6 people in a ceramics class, maybe 70, and you know, it's can be tricky. But yes, I definitely think inclusivity in an eye towards cost is important.
I think that's a great idea. I think we can do both, right?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
have
yeah,
it too,
right,
but then
right,
also,
right.
because like you said, that's still not going to help for some programs.
Yeah, you
and
got
then
to be
can use
careful
that.
because that was, you know, it was just, and I hadn't even thought about it until someone brought it up in a meeting. I'm like, oh, you know, like,
Yeah, congratulations. Now it's $600. That's not gonna. Yeah.
like, yeah. So, but yeah.
Pam, I
like
think
what
Nicole
you're
wants in here.
Yeah, I was
Nicole
just
wants in.
saying, I think that Hannah's saying about scholarships makes a lot of sense. And I was surprised with what Tim was just showing us. And Tim, we'll miss you. Anyways, that is less than 1% of grants. And I guess that makes sense some ways because, you know, it's like a lot of time people look for grants when they don't have something like a general fund or something they know that is going to come regularly. But I don't know, for scholarships, maybe like grants would be something where it could just be like, oh, we want this grant because we want to have scholarships. And then like, it'd be sort of like, here's, you know, some of the programs, like you said, All of Us Express.
Yeah,
It's
the
pretty
challenge is
pricey.
though, but the challenge is, and that's because we were kind of talking with city manager about that the parks grants, there's so many capital improvement grants. There are not very many program grants.
Yeah,
so that we almost need like micro grants, and then I'm starting to churn up some art grants, but it's a whole different grant world, and it's more challenging. Not more challenging, Mindy, because yours is challenging, but it's you know, we almost need more booster groups in their specialty to start doing that sort of
with like you say with the arts, because a lot does fit under that.
Yeah.
If I can make one more point with respect to this whole fee conversation, this is a mind shift, and it's going to be a mind shift for your staff, because Wendy and Jane can tell you what these folks have had drilled kind of into them is cost recovery for a number of years.
Yep.
So, working with the staff to change that point of view is, I think, will be welcomed, but I think it's one of those things that it's going to take some time to address. Because
well, just debits and credits though, so it would, you know, it's not, you know. So.
Exactly. You and I are thinking the same path. Right?
Well, and if I could just add, perhaps this is for a discussion at another time, but in general, it seems to me that the fees, they seem quite reasonable. And if you compare the recreation facilities to the private facilities, I mean, I pay $170 for 12 months as a senior for my HANA membership. And I don't know what the max charge is, but I think you pay that much in a month for the max. So I would just add to the discussion that I think in general, the fees are quite reasonable.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are any other benchmark comments or observations anyone has? All right, let's move on to the capital project updates.
So this is a pretty thorough update that's been prepared, and Wendy's going to go ahead and do that for you. This may be repeat information for some of you, but it's going to be brand new information for others. And status updates have been important to this commission in the past, so that's one of the reasons we do that. So Wendy?
I would just add that repeat information is very good.
Thank you. Okay, I am going to share my screen, and then Once I confirm that you are seeing the beginning of a slide presentation, I can start. Are you seeing the Parks and Recreation Capital Projects update?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to see if I can actually do this as a slideshow. I think Tim had indicated that he had some trouble with that, so this may not work for me, but
It'll work. It's just we were losing part of the screen.
Okay. So we are going to give you a Parks and Recreation Capital Projects update. And at the end, it does include some facilities, some discussion of facilities projects. And that's because even though facilities aren't under the purview of the Park and Recreation Advisory Commission, it is part of the Department of Parks and Recreation. And so to give you a real little bit of a more comprehensive picture of what we're addressing from the staff perspective, we included that real briefly at the end as well. So we'll talk about recently completed projects, ongoing projects, and then near-term projects, which are things we're looking at over the next couple of years. So first of all, we've got two projects that we recently completed, and sometimes I feel like I've talked about these on and on and on. So I'm going to try and go through this fairly quickly. White Park Trail Extension and Natural Area Improvements and Bailey Park Improvements. We have the White Park Trail Extension and Natural Area Improvements, where we installed an extension of the Northern Tier Trail from Pebblebrook on up to Lake Lansing Road and did a looped trail through White Park. And then we also installed a section, an extension of the Northern Tier Trail from where it ends on Tower Avenue south down to the border between the city of East Lansing and Meridian Township. This is what that section along Tower Avenue looks like. Currently, it sort of goes, it's like a trail to nowhere, but Meridian Township is in the process of securing easements so that they can make the connection from Lake Lansing Road to this trail. They are hopeful that that will be constructed next summer. Through White Park, we have some asphalt trails, some turnpike trail, which is a crushed limestone trail. And then we do have a section of boardwalk, which is ends in an overlook platform to look at the vernal pool. We are in the process of having a bench and interpretive sign installed in this overlook platform, and hopefully that will happen within the next 4 to 5 weeks, provided our contractor can get to it within that time. I believe you all are aware of the vast improvements that we did at Bailey Park. One of the ways this presentation shows the information is we talk about before and after. This is where the project began. This particular play structure was removed when Capital Area Housing Partnership began the redevelopment of the Bailey Community Center into the housing that it currently is. And we received a $25,000 donation because this play structure had to be replaced. So we leveraged that into the Bailey Park improvements, and that particular play structure that you just saw, this is the replacement play structure. There's a swing set, it's a larger structure. There is the appropriate surface material beneath it, edging, etc. And you can see the new Bailey building in the background. This is what the edge of the park looked like when we began our project. The fencing was old and run down. It was, broken, concrete exposed in a number of ways. And this is the entrance to Bailey Park now. I like this current entrance far better than the view on the previous page. We talked in this particular development, we talked a lot about something called parks without borders or parks without boundaries. And what that is a park development philosophy that doesn't close the park off from the community. We talk about opening the edges of the parks, removing the fences, and letting the park move out into the community as well as the community becoming part of the park itself. The other thing that it does is if you look at this picture, you can see there's a lot of lost space between the road and the fence. There's a sidewalk and some grass, but really it's not part of the park at all, where by removing the fence, you can capture that space for the park. This is what it looks like once we removed that fence and redeveloped the pathway and we recaptured all of that space. And this is just a much more welcoming and enjoyable experience, as well as a much more friendly experience. This was the center of the park before. This is the center of the park after, with a nice new plaza, seating, a shade structure. This was the existing play structure for the older children. We did not remove that. We didn't refurbish it. What we did is we installed, we removed the existing surface material and installed newer surface and edging. And just that really transformed the looks of this particular play structure. And then we also installed some native landscape gardens with interpretive signage. The goals of these gardens is we wanted to demonstrate how you can use native landscaping and you can use pollinator-friendly practices within a residential setting. I think a lot of people think about natural landscapes and they think it has to look like a wildflower garden, and it doesn't. There's a lot of ways that you can do natural landscaping, even if you like a more cultivated look. We have a lot of project partners on this, and when we talk about expenditure for capital funds, this particular project was done with $3,000 from the general fund. All of the other money for this project was raised through all of these various different ways. And this project was probably about $360,000 or $370,000 by the time it was all said and done. Now we're going to talk about ongoing park and rec projects. This is the list here of the different things that we'll do at. And these are what are going on now or in process for next year. First, we have the pedestrian connections to the Northern Tier Trail. This project is scheduled to be completed this summer and into the late fall. We will be installing a pedestrian connection from the Tamarisk neighborhood to the Northern Tier Trail, as well as a connection from the Bessemer neighborhood to the Northern Tier Trail. We are also looking at doing a realignment of the Northern Tier Trail, a section that runs, whoops, that is not what I expected. A section that runs from the bridge going to the soccer complex down to the bridge going to Abbey Road. The section of trail that is shown as dashed red will be removed and it will be realigned where there is a white pathway. The purpose here is we're looking at moving the trail out of this section of trail out of the drain easement, because one of the issues we're having with this particular length of trail is its proximity to the drain and the impacts to the trail when the drain is cleaned out. So we are planning currently to have this project completed yet this fall. Another project we're working on is the Patriarch Park Pavilion and Restroom renovation. We're actually looking at a July completion for this project, and this is going to be another real fun before and after presentation to do. We're completely renovating both restrooms and the pavilion structure. The restroom renovations will be, like I said, a complete renovation. The roofs will be replaced with metal standing seam roofs with eaves troughs. We're installing low flow, hands-free and energy efficient plumbing fixtures, LED light fixtures, tubular daylight devices, and an assortment of other things meant to be environmentally more friendly and more responsive. The south restroom also is being converted from one men's room and one women's room into 4 unisex restrooms as well to better serve our population. This is sort of a little bit in process. We are joking that on that south restroom, we're going to put Tim's name over the beam that you see there, because it was real important to him that we remove that white and green block wall, and we were able to do that, and it really opens the structure up. So we laugh that this is Tim's contribution to the project. We're also looking at extensive improvements to the pavilion, a complete renovation here as well, new metal roofing system, a rain catchment system where we collect all the runoff. We're replacing the concrete floor, the counters and doors, installing LED light fixtures. And one of the things we also are doing is the one end of the pavilion, which is basically the, let me get this right, east end of the pavilion. We removed a wall that was along the end of the pavilion, and it just completely opened up the look of the pavilion. And this particular structure really is going to be transformed by the end. We are also adding in a larger concrete area and concrete pathways to be more accessible, as well as to provide us with an outdoor gathering space. We are excited about the possibility of planning some events here and using this facility in a much more flexible fashion. Another exciting thing with this is with the south restroom, we are installing our first solar array in a park, and the solar array is designed to provide all of the necessary electrical needs for that south restroom. You can see a picture in the lower left-hand side. This is the new walkway leading from the restroom down to the road. And it actually was only in for about 2 days when it got tagged with some graffiti that was not the kind of sentiment that we're interested in promoting in our community. So we did have that removed, but that's why you see a little gray square there. I was trying to block that out. I do not have a picture of how wonderful it looks now that it isn't covered in graffiti, but it's very attractive. We are currently in the planning stages to reconstruct the tennis and pickleball courts in Patriarch Park as well. These are some pictures of what those courts look like currently, definitely in need of some upgrades and improvements. The basketball courts are really in very poor condition. And so we are completely redoing this particular aspect of the park with pathways, new surface materials, additional pickleball courts, a shade structure, some landscaping, new basketball courts, etc. Our goal here is to be in construction for this next summer.
I've got something, Wendy, about that. So I've been hanging out in the meditation circuit, which I've come to like, and the plants are coming back. But I am seeing a regular use of the board that people are hitting tennis balls against.
Ah, okay.
But I've just thought that's something that maybe we could get something at the Hannah wall at some point or something. But like it surprised me. I used to do it many years ago, but it surprised me how I'm regular. People are playing basketball all the time. One or two pickleball courts have been busy. I've been there 2 or 3 times a week, and I've cut through there, and then someone's at that board, that wall. So it's something to think about, that if maybe we can offer a future plan for relocation or something to think about. I was surprised because we've talked about this repeatedly, and I don't think I thought anybody was using that, and it is not great. So anyway.
That is very useful to know, Pam. Thank you, because that is planned for removal, and part of it is because it needs some attention. But the greater issue is we weren't aware that was even being used.
Right,
So
I was surprised.
yeah,
And I wonder, and I thought if Gary was still here, is there any paddleball practice that people would do alone, handball style or something? But yeah, so Just something to think about.
Okay.
But yes, always somebody on the basketball court, number of people on the basketball court all the way through.
Which is amazing because these pictures, you can't see necessarily the detail, but the footings are heaved, and it's just in horrible condition, but people are out there using it. So I'm excited to see the use it'll get once it's in better condition. Some of the improvements we're working on for the Aquatic Center this summer, I think you all are aware the Aquatic Center is going to remain closed this summer so that we can complete some pretty extensive improvements. We'll be removing the pools and falls and replacing the pool liner. You can see these pictures, I think, do a good job of demonstrating why that is necessary. We also have some pretty substantial repairs that need to happen to the gutters and some assorted areas of the concrete decking. We also will be refurbishing the water slides, both inside and out, repainting the slide towers. And what's not mentioned here is we're doing some work in the restrooms as well. We are hoping to install new partitions, and we're looking at a new flooring system there also. Then the other thing we're looking at is doing some landscape renovations. Oh, bathhouse interior improvements. Okay, so I had a slide on that. So we're also doing some improvements to the landscaping. The sand play area is going to be converted into a turf area for bathers and other users to provide more open space. And then the interior improvements in the restrooms, as I indicated. Oh, I apologize. This is supposed to be East Lansing Softball Complex dugout upgrades, but the photos were not replaced. So I'll just talk about that. We have just completed actually improvements or upgrades to the dugouts at the softball complex. Dugouts on 2 of the fields have been, they now have concrete surfacing, and then on 2 of the fields, their surfacing was refurbished so that it's in much better condition. We have new benches, new shade structures on all of the dugouts, and the vast majority of those improvements were completed thanks to a donation from the East Lansing Baseball Club, or a fundraising campaign from the baseball club. Some of the near-term park and rec projects, which are things that are up and coming, I'll zip through here fairly quickly. One is we're looking at doing some improvements to the Lake Lansing Road Tower Avenue intersection. We had hoped to be doing that work this summer. As it turned out, we have been through numerous design iterations with the Ingham County Road Commission, or I'm sorry, Ingham County Road Department. We have now settled on this particular iteration, and the road department has applied for a grant to assist in the funding of this, because I was able to secure $400,000 for it, but this particular redesign and iteration is expected to cost probably twice that. So the grant timing on that and the funding availability means that that project is unlikely to be done before the end of next summer. But once it is completed, this is going to be a much improved intersection with new signalization, pedestrian crossings, pedestrian activated crossings, as well as audible crossings for those who have hearing impairments. And when we just think we know it's going to provide much greater connection between the trail sections as well as Meridian Township Trail System. We are also considering looking at a grant to fund some improvements to the Northern Tier Trail from the soccer complex or Coleman Road to State Road. This section of the trail is not in Ingham County, and therefore it is not eligible for Ingham County Trails millage funds. So this particular section was not improved several years ago when the rest of the trail was. And so it's really going to need to be addressed in the next few years. We also are looking at some need to repair the soccer complex and softball complex parking lot to do some resurfacing. You can see the circular picture in the lower left-hand corner. That is, I think that is Tim McCaffrey's shoe, and you can see the crack that is in that pavement is as wide as half of his shoe length. So we've got some pretty serious cracking and condition issues. And another thing that we're looking at is installation of an extension of the Northern Tier Trail from all along the south side of the soccer complex over to Coleman Road. There exists right now a 200-foot conservation easement. It's shown there sort of in the center of the drawing. And we have talked for some time about installing this trail section. What we're hoping is that we can secure some Ingham County Trails millage funds for the section that is just south of the soccer complex. And then we can look at some Natural Resources Trust funds as a match. And then we also have some funds available under an agreement with the developers of the villas and the Beaumont. And so between those three sources, we're hoping we can put together adequate funds to do this trail extension. To the facilities project, these are the facilities projects that we have underway currently and that we're also overseeing, like I said, in addition to what we've reviewed so far. There is a section of the library roof, which is currently being replaced. It says under construction here, but I believe it was actually just finished today. We are going out to bid to completely redo the HVAC system in the library, East Lansing Public Library. That is out to bid actually starting today. We are designing a renovation of Fire Station number 1. The fire station hasn't been upgraded or renovated since the 70s, I believe, so that is in dire need of some improvement. We'll be installing an air purification system in East Lansing City Hall. It's a bipolar ionization system to assist with cleaning the air of viruses and other airborne components. That is under construction. Well, actually, it will be within the next couple of weeks, but we've awarded a contract on that. We are then looking at the possibility of a similar system for the Hannah Community Center system. We are doing an assessment currently, and we expect then that will go to bid for installation of a system as well. And then we are also doing some upgrades to the Hannah building management system, and that is under construction currently. That was necessary because the existing building management system is obsolete, and we ran into some programming and security issues that we needed to address.
What is a building management system?
That is basically the computerized system that runs the heating and cooling of a all buildings now are, you know, yeah, computerized.
Digitized.
Yeah. And, you know, your facilities person can sit at their computer in, you know, Traverse City and reset the temperature in the Hannah Gymnasium. You know, not that Carlos ever goes to Traverse City. I think he works 24/7, but
even better, you could auto program it to cool down at night or what, you know, yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And so that is just the phase 1 to the Hannah building upgrades. What we're doing now, these were the things that we really needed to do almost on an emergency basis. We will be looking at needing to do some additional improvements probably in the next 5 years there along the same lines. And then we are also looking at a little more long-term for facilities projects is we have some roof areas of the Hannah Community Center that need to be replaced. We have the facade of the building that basically surrounds the swim pool. We have some issues there that need to be repaired. And then we have some long-term facility needs that we'll be conducting some of the engineering on. So that gives you kind of a little bit more of a comprehensive look at all of the various things we have going on. That was a lot of information and I talked really fast. So does anybody have any questions about any aspect of that?
Sarah?
I just want to say that this is really helpful information and it gives us a sense of all of the areas that the city is working on. So thank you for your hard work on this. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yes, thank you. A lot of exciting things going on. I have two questions, one about the trail and one about the soccer complex parking lot. So just a quick one on the section of the northern tier trail where that deals with the drain, where you're like changing the routing.
Yep.
Will the existing section remain fully operational through it? I just know that's such a crowded, like that is a very high use section of the trail. So if it was out of commission for a period of time, it would be felt.
You know what? That is a very good point, and that's something I'll make a note of that we address, because we could. There will be a time when that section is, I think, going to have to be out of commission, especially the section that goes from the circle south down to where you see the bridge on Abbey Road. That particular section is going to be shifted 5 to 10 feet to the east to move it further away from the drain. I don't believe we can keep the existing trail in operation while we construct the new one. So I think that's going to have to be out of commission for some time. But I believe for the section north, where we're going to move the trail instead of from the dashed red line to the white line, I think we should be able to construct the trail, the white trail, before we remove the red dash trail. So that's something that I can talk with our contractor about. Some of that will depend on how they're looking at timing their particular processes, but that's definitely a conversation we can have with them. So at least a portion of that remains in use.
Okay. And then my other question is about the parking lot resurfacing at the soccer complex. And this probably comes from the fact that I've been spending an inordinate amount of time up there because I have 2 kids doing East Lansing Soccer Club right now. And I'll say, while it's not quite Frandor parking lot levels of chaos, it is a chaotic parking lot on major soccer practice evenings. And so what I would hope going into this is that it might be an opportunity to think about traffic management, pedestrian management, and bike access with the facility. For instance, we, getting to the northern tier trail part of this, we try to bike our kids up there when we can, partly to avoid the car chaos. But on that front, you still have to get your kids and the bikes across the chaotic parking lot once you're there. So, you know, one question is whether there's a way to integrate the trail in such a way that it's easier for children on bikes to get directly to the soccer side of the, you know, but then I just wonder, because people try to do drop-offs, but there's no real drop-off lane. And, you know, and then in terms of walking, there's very little in the way of islands in that parking lot. And so trying to get small kids and soccer balls in any event, I think it's just an opportunity, since if it's going to be resurfaced anyway, to think about some of that stuff.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I too have spent a huge amount of time up there with my children playing soccer, and I have noticed similar things. And I know the particular club that my daughter plays with, they tried to use what is meant to be a bus drop-off. they tried to use that for like a drop-off lane, and it was real, you know, people were confused by that. They just would park there. So, but that is something that, as you indicated, could potentially be addressed with maybe some restriping. You know, maybe there's some other ways to look at that. And I could see how it would be very challenging for anyone on a bike, because if you just look at this air photo, there isn't a clear connection that is from the trail to the soccer fields without going through the parking lot. You don't have sort of a off-road way to get there. So I think that's a very good point as well. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, well, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It took me a bit. I have shampoo in my hand actually because I'm working on my son's hair. But so I'd feel remiss if I didn't ask, with the things that you have going on now, and then also upcoming, like with the soccer and aquatic center. So it's cool to see like the little pollinator garden, of course, at Bailey. But are there plans, like, you know, even with like kind of the trail things, to sort of like consciously put more of those sort of more naturalized plantings, you know, kind of like where the ground's torn up already, the decision. Yeah, cool.
And we are going to talk about that. That's under the next item, the staff follow-up items. So we do have
okay.
I just Fine Park with Wildflower Flower Garden.
Too.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
Thank you.
And I will indicate, and I hope I'm heading in the right direction here. I am. To use this particular project as an example, we've got several areas in here where we've indicated we've got some bioretention basins and swales. And then we also have some pollinator plantings around the overhead shade structure. Now, I don't know enough about the functioning of bioretention basins to know if we can leave those natural, for instance, you know, use them more as a naturalized area and, you know, not mow them, but that's definitely something that I can look into. We do try in each one of our projects, as much as we can, look at that type of a thing. And actually that's something that the DNR strongly encourages in their grant projects. So we do try and do that as much as possible, but I'll get a little more information about whether that's possible for the bioretention basins, because that could be a potential location for something like that. That's the first one that comes to mind.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
So let's talk about that some more too. So now are we capital projects? Any other comments?
I just have a quick question if I can.
Sure.
Thank you. Wendy, you had mentioned at the softball complex where the new dugouts went in. And by the way, they look great. We were there last night for my son's first home game at complex. And for 10U, for East Lansing Baseball Club, that was very exciting because the cement and the new benches look great. It does look like there's going to be some sort of a shade structure put above the dugouts. Do you happen to know when those might go in?
Actually, my understanding is it's supposed to be tomorrow or Friday.
That would be, it's supposed to be very hot this weekend. And so if there's practice there, that would be great if those were in. So that would be awesome. So the sooner the better, if you have any pull on that.
Well, that's a wonderful Wendy moment to ask about something like that and to say tomorrow. Yes. About as good as it gets.
If I'm remembering the schedule, I believe we've got a tournament going on there this weekend. And so we were really pushing the contractor to try and have it done by then. And so that's my understanding at this point in time.
Well, it looks awesome. So on behalf of the 10U East Lansing team, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That everybody on capital projects?
Can I make one comment with respect to the capital projects?
Certainly.
Although we have a robust project list. Our staffing for our capital projects program includes Wendy, Jim Jennings, who is a very good long-term staff member who is essentially in training right now. And then Justin is providing some support for administrative services. He's starting to provide some support for Wendy with respect to follow up with all of the grants through the county and through the Natural Resources Trust Fund and what have you. So if you can imagine, this is a very full menu of activities for a very small group of people. So, and the work that Wendy gets done, as well as Jim and what Justin is becoming introduced to, both Jim and Justin are becoming introduced to, and of course Jane helps out too. And we do have consultants that we're hiring, of course, but this is a very robust program for a very small staff. So, and they're excited and happy to do it because they've all been around for a number of years when we were hoping for this type of project level, and it just didn't exist. So thank you to Wendy.
All right, staff reporting, follow-up items?
Yes, director's report. I think there was 4 items that I identified in the director's report. 2 of them I've asked Justin to go ahead and report on for you. One of them has to do with the work staff has been doing with respect to vending and food trucks, and the other one with respect to the Fine Park Wildflower Garden project. So Justin, if you would be willing to do that.
Yes, hi, thank you, Tim, and good evening. So just a brief update on a couple of things that I've been working on. First is in relationship to the food truck conversation from last month. And simultaneously, there's been some conversations from a, excuse me one moment. Tim, you want to do the other stuff first?
Oh, sure. I'd be more than happy to do that. I think we made the progress on the Dr. Green historical marker. So we had that application, what do I want to call? I guess I call it approval from City Council to give the MLK Commission the approval to submit the application. And it's really Adam DeLay doing the MLK application on behalf of the MLK Commission.
Yep. And just to give you a brief update there, it was submitted and the DNR acknowledged receipt of that. It was received on the 10th. I got an email from them. They're supposed to be reaching out within the next month or so to kind of give their initial feedback on the application, and then we'll go from there. So appreciate everyone's help with that and getting a letter to council and council's work on that so that we can move forward on it.
Thank you. And then the public property naming policy resolution, Chuck, I know we sent it off to the city attorney's office and we received, it was going to be on the agenda for the May 11th meeting. We didn't get the information back from the city attorney's office until the very last minute. And now we're working with them on some comments that they made. Their comments had nothing to do with the park side of it and had everything to do with the street side of it. And there was no changes made to the street side of it. So that had to work through the planning. We're working with the planning department on that now. So if Jane is working frantically to try to get that done by tomorrow so they can be on Tuesday's agenda for city council. If not, it'll be on the following city council agenda on June 8th. And we're going to get to the end of that project. I do want to say one more thing that we found out today. Our staff, Julianne Jennings and Kathleen Miller, have been working on a Michigan Department of Education Great Start grant for our before after school program, our summer camp program.
Excellent.
an $84,000 grant was applied for. We received word today that we had conditional approval for that grant. So that grant will be very helpful in terms of continuing to move forward with our plans for summer activities and help offset many of our expenses associated with that. Now, also associated with that particular grant is we needed to partner with a 501c3, and given our relationship with All of Us Express Children's Theater 501c3, the grant request went through that 501c3, and they'll serve as sort of a pass-through for us on that particular grant program. So that's great news that we just received today. Finally, we did have to close the swimming pool down today. We had some glycol that got spilled in our mechanical room, and glycol is a organic antifreeze, if you will, that's used to service the coils on our rooftop units. And some of that spilled into the swimming pool. A very small trace amount spilled into the swimming pool. So the proper protocol is to close the pool down immediately, and then you drain the pool, and then you flush all of the lines and the pumps, and then you refill the pool, rebalance the pool, and then reopen the swimming pool. Commissioner Chuck Overby was in the swimming pool when the cloud of the cloud of dust, if you will, came into the pool. So he can tell you from firsthand experience better than I can what happened today. But all reports are everything is going to be just fine, but the pool will not be able to reopen until next week.
Well, I'll jump in really quickly and just, it was quite an odd circumstance. All of a sudden, the water inflow coming into the pool was cloudy, and it was spreading out in the pool. And the lifeguards did exactly the right thing. They told everyone to get out of the water, and we found out what was happening, that this was glycol that was coming into the pool. It was a very small amount. After we'd exited the pool, I stuck my hand in where one of the jets was coming in to see if I could feel it or taste it or smell it, and I couldn't. But they kicked us out of the pool early and said, don't come back till Monday, so they can drain the pool and refill it. And of course, that's the proper thing to do to be safe. But I just want to repeat that the Hannah staff and the lifeguards handled it beautifully.
So are you ready, Justin?
I think so. So looking at a food truck permit program, in relationship to the conversation we had at the last month's meeting, the clerk's office also received an inquiry from a vendor who was interested in vending in city parks. So we're exploring with stakeholders what it looks like to do a pilot program in parks this summer for food trucks and concessionaire carts. That's still going through the process, so I hope to be able to provide more details at the next meeting and possibly bring a draft policy resolution that would go before council for your input next month as well. And then for Henry Fine Park, in relationship to Commissioner Biber's proposal for a pollinator garden, that definitely aligns with the goals of the city and the pollinator-friendly garden program. Had some conversations with DPW, and there is general support for doing that in Henry Fine Park. There are some infrastructure and road repaving projects right near the Gilchrist entrance to the park that are going to be starting probably in mid-June, is the last information that I heard. And so we might be looking at this fall and combining it with a rain garden to manage some of the low points in that section of the park and do some stormwater management at the same time.
So that concludes the report that staff had, and I wish everyone all the best of luck in all of your future endeavors. And I've really appreciated all the support of the commission over the years. This commission and I think I've shared with others that every commissioner we've ever had has been great advocates for recreation and parks, and that's been very, very rewarding, and thank you.
And we're in the commissioner communication, and I want to say, Tim, that I've really enjoyed working with you, and the fact that I've been commissioner and chair with you and Bob Moore, I consider myself pretty lucky and pretty cream of the crop experience. It's a beautiful park system, and you're really going to be missed. And congratulations on retiring. You know, it's good for you, bad for us.
Thank you, Pam.
Chuck, do you have a comment?
Couple of comments. Tim, I will repeat my thanks to you for your service. It's been an honor and a pleasure for me to know you, to work with you, and to become friends with you. You're one of the best, and thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Chuck.
Adam, do you have something?
I do have a second, just a second, and this is a request of Tim and Wendy, and I need your comments and maybe your help. So I bike most every day on the Northern Tier Trail, and there's a section of the trail between Coleman Road and State Road where hawk nest homes back up to the trail from the west, and then on the east is a drainage ditch. There are people from Hawk Nest that are using the banks of the drainage ditch as to dump their yard waste.
Oh.
You can go along the trail and you can see that they dump their yard waste at the sides of the drainage ditch. And there's an area that the city mows, and it's between the area that they mow and the drainage ditch. I mean, can we post signs that ask them not to do that? What might we do about this? And it's really distressing and unfortunate that they don't take the little bit of time to put their yard waste out and call the city to come pick it up.
We will follow up with that. I'm not sure exactly what our course of action will be, but we will certainly follow up with that and report back to the commission.
Thank you.
Adam?
Just a couple quick things. First, Tim, congratulations. You will be very much missed. Second thing, just for heads up for folks, I will be unable to attend next month's meeting on the 16th due to a prior commitment. And then the third thing I wanted to bring up, a neighbor of mine approached me with some concerns he had regarding ivy growth on the Northern Tier Trail specifically, and I'll follow up with you, Tim and Wendy, and make sure I have it right. He had mentioned if you're going east from Abbott, past the fire station, and you sort of get into some of those areas where new trees have been planted, he had noticed that I think there's some dead trees nearby near the newer planted trees, and you've got ivy that's sort of growing over the dead trees and making its way towards the new trees, and had just expressed some concerns about that. The second area I think he referred to was near the bridge, the existing bridge, sort of if you're going like from where the new Bessemer Bridge is going to go, that side of the drain, that bridge there, sort of where the trail splits by the park. He had indicated some ivy issues there. I think that's where he said, I will confirm that with him and then maybe shoot you guys an email. His main concern was just that apparently it was overcrowding some dead trees and making its way towards some of the ones, the newer ones that had been planted.
Sure, we'll follow up.
All right, that was it.
Thank you.
All right. Sarah R.
So first, just thank you, Tim, and been nice to briefly get to know you over Zoom. Yeah, I wish you well. I guess I have two items. So one, just excited to hear about progress with the food truck idea. I think in some email that Sarah Hoover brought up the question, and I was just wondering is if that there's the permitting idea, but then there's the talk about doing food trucks with events, and whether, especially maybe a couple of events at Patriarch, and whether that whether the permitting process would be applicable for like a one-off event type of situation, or whether they would, in any event, that was a little.
You want to?
Justin?
Yeah, so in the current draft proposal, we have indicated that city-sponsored events would be a separate process.
Okay.
So for example, the Jazz Festival has its own process when it's in person for bringing in food trucks to that event.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And I mean, I think it will be, I mean, now knowing the Jazz Festival is not in person, that hopefully the opportunity to have a few, smaller scale by comparison to the Jazz Festival, but community type events at Patriarch in July would probably be really welcomed in the community. Since we have a little bit less going on as our current calendar looks. And then I just had one other question, which is about B&A for next school year. And I know that the school district hasn't necessarily kind of fully shared next school year's plan, but I think for a lot of families, the idea that some routines of schedules and work and things will be more normal. Is there the expectation in talking to the school district that B&A will be back in the buildings? And
yes, we plan to be back we're back in the buildings now for after school.
For after school, you're back. Yeah. Okay. I guess
we're not
I
in
always
for
see
before.
the Glencairn kids walking to Hannah, but maybe that's not.
Yeah, I think the Glencairn kids walking to Hannah is a result of some registration numbers wise.
Okay.
That required us to do that. But I can clarify that with Julianne Jennings and certainly let you know the answer to that. But the hope is that we'll be back in, assuming the school district goes back to in-person classroom situations, that we'll be back in all elementary schools in beginning fall of 2021.
Cool. All right, good. Knock on wood. Let's have that happen. All right, Sarah H.
Thanks. So Tim, congratulations. I already sent you the email that I'm selfishly sad for us, but thrilled for you. It's a huge milestone, so enjoy. Chuck, regarding your comment on Hawk Nest and the residents here in that back corner dumping their yard waste, even if we post signs or something more immediate that we could do, and Tim, if you need contacts for them, let me know, but I would reach out to the HOA so that they can at least get an email out to the entire subdivision. I think we're up to 380 homes now or something like that. So that's usually the quickest way to communicate. And perhaps they can also post on the neighborhood Facebook page to say, hey, stop doing this. For those of you that are, or if you aren't on here, but see your neighbors doing it, please ask them to stop. So at least we can maybe get a little bit of a quicker route that way. And now I'm in the dark. Sorry about that. My screen went off. So just
we're
a
more than
suggestion.
happy to contact the homeowners association.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Yep,
it may be naivete, right? So you don't want to, maybe people don't know it's not a good idea, you know.
Right, exactly.
I know, Chuck, I know.
That's not my corner of the neighborhood. I just want that on the record. We bag our yard waste. Okay. And then my last question was, I guess, a little more maybe for Tim and Wendy, but I didn't ask it when Wendy was talking about all the projects in progress plus stuff on the future outlook. I had another dad from school ask me if there are any plans at looking at potentially having dedicated lacrosse space. So I don't come from a lacrosse town, so I'm not that familiar with the sport. I do know, the field needs to be about 110 yards, so it is a pretty big space. But I also know a lot of the communities around us do have their own lacrosse field, and lacrosse is pretty big, and they're starting them a lot younger now. So I wasn't sure if anyone knew if a dedicated lacrosse space has come up at all.
The lacrosse fields that we have currently are not this. They're not on city park land. They are on school district land, and that's where most of the lacrosse has taken place at this point in time. We have not had any conversations about dedicating any of our existing athletic fields for that purpose, but that may be something that the conversation is going to have be revisited at some point in the future. So certainly that's a conversation for the future. The lacrosse club, we are partnering this summer with the lacrosse club on a what I would call workshops or clinics, and those will be held mainly for the very young players. And it won't be on dedicated fields, but it'll be on the fields that we have in the Hannah Park and the parkland right there. But those are smaller fields for the very youngest of the kids. So that's, I think, something that's going to have to be perhaps on plans as we look towards the future. And given our existing park system, I think it'll require additional park space.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Nicole?
Hey, hi. Well, Tim, we'll miss you very much.
Thank you.
You're going to be a model of like competency and conformment for me for the rest of my life. So, and I'm not, and I mean it. You're great. So I have a few questions. I wonder, are the water fountains being planned to be put back in commission at the parks this summer? Because I know they were turned off from COVID last year. I'm not sure if they're running or if they're going to.
You're talking drinking fountains?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know the statuses of those currently in terms of the health department regulations. I don't know. I'll have to find out what the status is of those.
Okay. One of the reasons I ask is last year in the Pinecrest neighborhood we had a Juneteenth event that ended up at Henry Fine, and we just made sure everyone knew to pack their water. But it'd be kind of nice if there was water available, just because people, I set up a hose in our yard, but since everyone is ending up there again, and yeah, everyone's invited. But Juneteenth, it's a Saturday this year, so that's handy. But we're planning to have a celebration again in the neighborhood, and so I was curious about that. Related to that, the new path, road, trail, I don't know what we'll call it, but in Henry Fine, leading from Gilcrest basically to the school. Justin had mentioned that's probably going to start construction in June. Is that something that would be going on a weekend also? And if so, is there any way they could pause it on that Saturday for Juneteenth, just because we're hoping to have people do music, and whoever wants to speak is welcome to say some words, and it'd be nice if there wasn't construction sound, if that's something that does happen on the weekends. If it doesn't happen on a weekend, it's not an issue.
It's highly unlikely that there's any construction activity that's going to take place on a Saturday.
Cool, thank you.
Very
unlikely. Okay, just checking. And with the public schools, so similar to the pollinator garden, they at first I think they just didn't want to deal with it management wise, but I think it was really nice because we came very well prepared to their meeting and had all our listed the benefits of it, but also the work we've done with y'all and with the neighborhood association. So it kind of, I think, opened their minds up a bit. And so they would like to see a garden go on school property. And they want us to put together, you know, a presentation probably for the school board and everything. But part of what they definitely were curious about was further details about that partnership of using the water in Henry Fine Park as a source for the garden. And so, you know, just looking towards that for us to kind of, you know, at least have like some of the options that we were thinking of and had mentioned already, if not a final, you know, conclusion, but just something so they see like, oh yeah, this is like, you know, already been discussed and is being planned. So I think that's it. Anyone, any of you all ever go down Blanchette? Say hi to me. I've been planting and I like to visit people when I garden. So you too, Tim. Go down Blanchette sometime.
We'll have time to do that.
Yeah.
Ron, is there anything?
I was in the Pinecrest neighborhood yesterday. I was on the team of folks that were looking for the
the woman.
Yeah.
The missing woman that was, of course, happily found and
yes,
received medical attention, and great work on behalf of our police department. And they put out an opportunity for volunteers to come out. And I think they had 190 people come out to help the missing
Neat.
person. And she, of course,
that's neat.
yeah, it was good to see all the people who did volunteer. We saw groups, and thank you.
All right, Ron, do you have something?
No, I'm out of words. We had one of those 12:30 meetings last night.
I hear that.
I got nothing to say.
Yeah.
No, just if you guys have any issues or as you're reviewing, pick the stuff around the budget and that kind of stuff, we're still taking input. We will be making decisions and movement on the budget next week. So if you see something that's glaring, it's public, and you want to get a peek and something just jumps out at you and doesn't seem right, correspond at this point is the best way to get some input in, you know, probably even better than calling me at this point. But if there's something, some of it's baked in at this point, but you know, I'd love to hear from you still. And basically, it's going to be some flexibility and some weirdness in the budget because our budgeting team does a good job of keeping us under, but we kind of don't know the impact yet of what the federal dollars fully are going to be. All this stuff's going to happen after. And being in contract year with public safety as well, there's a lot of things in flux that could make this interesting. So we'd love to hear from you and your input at this time and definitely correspond. And just let other people know too. I said that on the council meeting, we read every single strip of anything that gets sent to us in correspondence, and I will reflect on it and relay it. It's just I take it really serious. So if you got anything, now's the time, and let people know to reach out to us. That was it.
All right.
Oh, and Tim, obviously, we're going to miss you. And thanks for really helping me get up to speed. Tim's one of the first people to really work with me and help me get the lay of the land and things on both Parks and Rec and just the city in general. So he's been there from the beginning for me and just really helpful. It's a huge loss at this time. And also with Chief Telefaro, just all this institutional memory and stuff leaving at one time is just really, it sucks for someone in my role who's newer. Yeah. So it really stinks to be losing him at this kind of, I think it's a crucial point. And I hope we continue on the path that's been set forth by both Tammy and Wendy for Parks and Recs, and can just continue to grow it and make you proud and come up with something where you look back and go, oh, that's cool. Or something. That's my goal. So I'm hopeful.
Ron, thank you. And you know, I've already shared with you, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. You can always get on the commission if you're bored.
Yeah. Hey.
I will not be on any public commissions.
It's worth a try.
That's a retiree famous last words though. So it's early goings. Early going.
And I tried to get him to come to next month's meeting, but he shot me down.
All right. Does someone want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Somebody want to support? All right, we're done for May's meeting, and we'll see everybody except for Adam in June. All right.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, Tim.
Hi, Tim.